Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to take a look at the golf swing of Collin Morikawa. If you're not very familiar with him, he's a 2020 PGA Champion. 3 career wins so far, and currently ranked number 7 in the world. This is December of 2020. Scoring average for 2020, 69.85. Average driving length, 297 yards, very respectable. Fairways in regulation, 65.5%. Greens in regulation, 69. And a very good young player. Really, I think a very smart young kid. I call him a kid. Great golf swing. We're going to start off by looking at some setup things. So first of all, we'll take a look at his feet placement. This might be one thing I would not prescribe for someone, say, over 30, 35. Once you get past that range, only because you'll see the feet are very square at impact, at address, especially the right foot. Left foot has a very mild amount of flare. So if you're not that young, probably would be a good idea to allow your feet to flare a little bit more than he does. And if we take a look at his grip, we'll see the left hand is what I would call fairly weak, probably a one knuckle grip. And interesting, right hand grip is slightly strong. So as we've seen in many great players, a so-called stock grip might not exist, but this obviously works for him. So that's a few things on the setup. Now we're going to go to the first clip, which is from TaylorMade. And if you'll notice, there are a few frames missing. That is the way the original film was done for some reason. So when we start with the setup, we've got some lines drawn here, just basically marking where the body is at address and where the head is, obviously. So let's get that part of the swing going. So a couple things we'll notice pretty soon. Very stable turn, meaning there's not any real indication of sway off the golf ball. But the head is definitely dropping a little bit. And let's see, that should be about the final frame there. So the head has dropped a little bit. The hips have actually moved slightly towards the target. And not a lot of hip turn. And that would be the second thing we might consider if you're not that young. He is obviously flexible enough to make such a good shoulder turn, probably at least, well, we can't really measure it. We could kind of guess that it could be 95, somewhere in that range. So a big, healthy trunk rotation with a very moderate amount of hip rotation. Again, for our older players, probably would be better to allow your hips to turn more, but he can do that. So there's the top of the swing. From face-on view, we'll also notice left arm is not perfectly straight, okay? Not perfectly. So there we are. Now, if we take a look on the right-hand screen, we'll see very Dustin Johnson-like top of swing with the left wrist move into a pretty large amount of flexion. We have the right knee staying slightly flexed, which is, again, probably more indication of his ability to rotate his upper body against his lower body. Older players would probably benefit from allowing the right knee to straighten a little bit more, get the hips to turn a little bit more, but he can do that. So there's the top, fairly, again, Dustin Johnson-like, pretty high left arm with the left wrist into flexion. So the benefit of this wrist condition is 2 parts. First of all, it keeps the face very square in the backswing, and second of all, it takes the loft off the golf club, and so we'll see that is definitely part of his move. So we've got him marked. Now here's the interesting thing. once we get him going down to the ball, this first move here, okay. So that is very Rory McIlroy-like. There's another clip with him with the guys from, I think it's Me and My Golf or something like that. The two guys from England that had a clip with Rory, and he was exhibiting that very same move, just a little, you could call it a bump, but it's definitely the weight's moving left and the pelvis is moving left. And when we get him to impact, and the reason I drew those 4 lines is to show you that when he's at impact, he's not actually occupying the same space, even though his feet are in the same place. So pelvis is more forward. You can see the left shoulders move forward, the right shoulders move forward, the heads move back and down. Why did the head move back and down if everything else moved forward? And that's going to be because his spine is tilted to the right, or he's gone into what you call a right side bend. So that helps him keep the shaft leaning forward at impact, keeps the club above the ground coming into the ball. And we'll see when he strikes the golf ball. As we've shown in a most recent video, most great players at impact have the grip arrive before the club head does. So that's another indication there of how that's accomplished. When the left wrist stays in flexion that long, creates more lean on the shaft, takes the loft off, and creates a very powerful impact. Now, let's take a look at the planar movements that he uses. So I've got the right elbow plane drawn in here. So you'll see he takes it back, basically tracing the right elbow plane, starts to go slightly above it. Club face, by the way, is mostly matching the spine angle, which is, I think, a very modern takeaway. And another thing that I like for a lot of people, at this checkpoint here, the club face is very similar to the spine angle. So the club face is staying nice and square all throughout the backswing. And again, we've seen this before at the top of the swing, left wrist is in a pretty large amount of flexion. If we look at the depth perspective of the grip, the grip itself has not moved inwards a great deal. And you'll see this little move right here. And then when he goes into the downswing, the shaft is going to go a little bit further behind him and very quickly seek that right elbow plane. And he's going to pretty much deliver that club on the right elbow plane. As he exits through, we'll see the left wrist now is moving towards, or has moved into extension, as we see there. And the club face points back at the camera. So this is a very non-rotational, as far as forearm rotation type of golf swing. It's very much more of a keep the wrist in flexion, rotate the body very aggressively. And Collin plays, according to him, a fade about 95% of the time. So if we have thought that a fade doesn't travel far, 297 yards, I think almost everyone who plays golf would take that with no issues whatsoever. Now let's take a look real quick at how he maintains his body space. Okay. So line across the rear, line across the back of the head. So he's actually pushed slightly back with the right hip, and you'll see the head is dropped. Now why is the head dropped? Because the body is going into left side bend in the backswing. Okay, so he's tilting his left side down as he rotates, and that creates that little look of the head dropping down slightly at the top. Still maintained his hips on the line or slightly past. And then when he goes to the ball, you see it still has really good depth with his left hip at impact. And is able to maintain, again, this look for a very long time because he's in a great deal of right side bend. And that's, again, a very young body that can do those things. It doesn't mean if you're not that age that you can't do it, but you just have to learn to do those things slowly, and you can certainly learn to do that. Now let's take a look at what type of takeaway does he use. So you can see the beginning, we've already missed a couple frames here, but it's a very trunk-oriented move away from the ball. So very little change in the arm structure, very little change in the wrist structure, except for the left wrist is starting to move into flexion or a slight bow. So by the time his hands are going to reach about waist high, you can see he's already achieved a large amount of chest rotation. And right about here, the right elbow is going to fold. And he'll keep turning his trunk because he doesn't really turn his hips a great deal. So now we'll see the pattern again with most of these young modern players. Slight amount of movement of the hips towards the target as the trunk unwinds, and it just continually unwinds as they change from left side bend now here he's starting to translate away from level into right side bend, and he's going to stay in the right side bend an extremely long time. Left knee starts to straighten post impact. Beautiful finish all the way through. All right, so up next we're going to take a look at two swings. One's a draw, one's a fade, and we'll quickly look and see if there's any big difference in how he achieves those two shots. Okay, now we're going to take a look at two different shots from the same teeing ground. On the left, we're going to take a look at the fade. He's aiming at this flag here. And on the right, he's hitting a draw to this flag over here. So first thing to note on the fade, feet are pretty well open. So is the rest of the body as well. On the draw, pretty well closed to the target. So as he expressed in this video, he basically uses alignment and face angle to help curve the shot. But we'll see there is one more little trick he's using to hit that draw just besides aligning himself to the right, because a fade player who just aligns to the right would not just naturally hit a draw just because you aimed your body over there. But let's play the fade swing first, or let's get him to the top and see what that looks like. And then the draw backswing. Okay, so could you really tell a huge difference? You would have to study a long time and very much nitpick to find any tremendous difference. Left wrist looks to be in the same amount of flexion. Left arm looks to be the same height off the ground. Everything looks very similar. Even the face angle, as far as we can tell at the top of the swing, looks extremely similar. Now when we go into the downswing for the fade, and sorry this footage jumps around a little bit, let's take him to as close as we can get. I think we're not going to get that frame because these were filmed at regular speed. About left arm parallel in the downswing. Let's see if we can get another frame. Okay, so here's the trick he's using. Besides some sort of moderate amount of change to the alignment and the face angle at address, he's going to plane these two swings differently. He's going to drop the draw. He's going to drop the shaft in more under the plane for that draw, because you can see clearly on the right the shaft is going to be basically in between the right shoulder and the right elbow, versus on the left slightly in line with the right shoulder. So he's going to drop the shaft in lower for the draw. Now let's go to that frame if we can catch it. And now we'll see on the right, the shaft is basically in line with the right forearm. Club head is here. And on the left, the pitch angle of the shaft is more steep. So that's going to naturally allow him to cover the ball a little bit more, or swing slightly more out to in for his natural fade. Versus the draw is going to come in just a little bit more underplane. And now we'll see that shot shape take place on the right. So there's his little bag of tricks to go from draw to fade. Very good swing. Lots of good things we can model. I love the left wrist flexion. I really like the ability to go from left side bend to right side bend throughout the swing. It's a good model if you're capable of doing this. And there's also some good things you can learn from it, no matter what type of swing you use. It's always interesting to watch these very good players swing. So hope you enjoyed this. If you like it, Collin says give it a like. If you haven't subscribed, please consider doing so. Helps us grow the channel and keep fresh content coming out. And appreciate you watching. Look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks.